Chapter 1082. Nothing different happened in the forest because of the arrival of Jing Yu's group. On the contrary, after entering the forest, Jing Yu seemed to have returned to her parents' embrace. She leaped freely in the forest as if she had returned to her parents' arms. "Boss!" Jing Yu jumped down from the tree trunk and panted slightly. Her breathing was a little uneven. She hadn't run like this in a long time, so she felt weak. "How is it? Has everything been arranged?" Jing Yu asked as she pulled back the rope while panting heavily. "Everything has been arranged. The soldiers have started to build houses according to the blueprints you gave them. They are hidden in the depths of the forest." Li Weiming, who was leading a group of people, quickly replied when he heard Jing Yu's question. "That's good." Jing Yu nodded and said, "Do you remember what I told you yesterday? Zhan Qi, Li Chong, each of you will lead your men to the periphery of the forest. As long as you think the path is passable, no matter how big or small it is, set up traps. You can use the tricks I taught you. After setting up the first line of defense, you will have to rely on yourselves for the next step." Jing Yu looked at the 5 captains and said, "Bring out your special skills from the black soil region." "Okay." Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. They all rubbed their palms together and spread out in the 5 directions that Jing Yu had mentioned. In this forest, if one didn't have a black Qilin as a mount, they wouldn't be able to walk on horses. It would be even more difficult to walk on foot. It was also unknown what kind of ferocious beasts they would encounter. Jing Yu had specially scouted out the terrain when she set up the traps. If one were to walk in a certain direction, one's subconscious would definitely choose that path. Jing Yu had set up the traps under such circumstances and was just waiting for one to step into them. In the depths of the forest, a group of soldiers were all building wooden houses. Almost all of the houses were covered with vines. From afar, it was almost impossible to see that they were houses. One would think that they were rocks covered with vines. Every time Jing Yu and the others went out, they would only come back at night. After going back and forth for many days, they saw that the construction of the house was almost complete. In order to ensure that there was someone watching over every place, Jing Yu and Jing Lang had no choice but to separate. Shangwan Linglan and Xing Er were in charge of one place. Yuan Mingyuan was in charge of another place. Jing Lang was in charge of another place. And General Shangwan was in charge of another place. Jing Yu, Qin Bai, and Qin Ge were all in charge of one place. Jing Yu would sometimes run around. Because the Black Qilin was able to move around more conveniently, it became the messenger of the 5 places and traveled around these places. After everyone had settled down, Jing Yu could finally do what she had always wanted to do. "Qin Bai, are you feeling better today?" As usual, Jing Yu entered Qin Bai's house early in the morning and asked Qin Bai, who was standing in the wooden house. "Sai, this young master put in so much effort to take care of you, but I didn't even receive a greeting." Qin Ge said sourly when he saw that Jing Yu walked in and asked about Qin Bai. "Oh!" Jing Yu calmly crossed her arms and glared at Qin Ge, who was the one who ate my barbecue last night, and said you were welcome. Nothing different happened in the forest because of the arrival of Jing Yu's group. On the contrary, after entering the forest, Jing Yu seemed to have returned to her parents' embrace. She leaped freely in the forest as if she had returned to her parents' arms. "Boss!" Jing Yu jumped down from the tree trunk and panted slightly. Her breathing was a little uneven. She hadn't run like this in a long time, and she was feeling weak. "How is it? Is everything arranged?" Jing Yu asked as she took back the rope and panted. "Everything has been arranged. The soldiers have started to build houses according to the blueprints you gave them. They are hidden in the depths of the forest." Li Weiming, who was leading a group of people, quickly replied when he heard Jing Yu's question. "That's good." Jing Yu nodded and said, "Do you remember what I told you yesterday? Zhan Qi, Li Chong, each of you lead your men to the periphery of the forest. As long as you think the path is passable, no matter how big or small it is, set up traps. You can use the tricks I taught you. After setting up the first line of defense, you will have to deal with the things in front of you." Jing Yu looked at the 5 captains and said, "Bring out your special skills from the black soil region." "Okay." Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. They all rubbed their palms and spread out in the 5 directions that Jing Yu had pointed out. In this forest, if one didn't have a black Qilin as a mount, they wouldn't be able to walk on horses. It would be even more difficult to walk on foot. It was also unknown what kind of ferocious beasts they would encounter. Jingyu had specially scouted out the terrain when she set up the traps. If one were to walk in a certain direction, one would subconsciously choose to walk in that direction. Jingyu had set up the traps under such circumstances and was waiting for one to step into them. In the depths of the forest, a group of soldiers were all building wooden houses. Almost all of the houses were covered with vines. From afar, it was almost impossible to see that they were houses. One would think that they were rocks covered with vines. Every time Jingyu and the others went out, they would only come back at night. After going back and forth for many days, they saw that the construction of the house was almost completed. In order to ensure that there were people watching over every place, Jingyu and Jinglang had no choice but to separate. Shengwan Linglan and Xing Er watched over one place. Yu and Mingyuan watched over another place. Jinglang watched over another place, and General Shengwan watched over another place. Jingyu, Qinbai, and Qinggu were all in one place. After the 5 places were split up, Jingyu would sometimes run around. Because the black Qilin was more convenient to move around, it became the messenger of the 5 places and traveled around them. After everyone had settled down, Jingyu could finally do what she had always wanted to do. Qinbai, are you feeling better today? As usual, Jingyu entered Qinbai's house early in the morning and asked Qinbai, who was standing in the wooden house. Sigh, this young master put in so much effort to take care of you, but I didn't even receive a greeting. Qinggu said sourly when he saw that Jingyu walked in and asked about Qinbai. Oh! Jingyu calmly crossed her arms and glared at Qinggu, who was the one who ate this young lady's barbecue last night, and said you were welcome. Chapter 1083. When Qinggu heard Jingyu's words, he made a simple sound. He swallowed his saliva and said, I'll go see if the medicine is ready. With that, Qinggu dashed out. This guy deserves a beating. Jingyu cursed before turning to look at Qinbai. You have a good relationship with Qinggu, Qinbai said as he looked at Jingyu with his clear eyes. What good relationship? Jingyu sighed helplessly. She looked up at Qinbai and said, You seem to be recovering well. Does your wound still hurt? If the wound doesn't heal after so long, wouldn't it ruin the reputation of Miracle Medical Valley? Qinbai smiled helplessly. He raised his arm and said, I'm fine now. It's been so long. I wanted to go out for a walk. Looking at your outfit, are you going out? Yes. Jingyu nodded. Then she seemed to have thought of something. She looked at Qinbai in surprise and said, Qinbai, you're from the Holy Family, right? I am. When Qinbai heard Jingyu's sudden question, he clenched his fist and asked, What's wrong? I have a sentence here. Take a look and see what it means. Jingyu said as she took out a piece of paper from her bosom. The words on the paper were copied down by Qinggu for Jingyu. The 2 sentences written on the paper were the words on the cowhide. Taming beasts as kings can contain the world. Qinbai took it in confusion. When he saw the words, his expression froze for a moment. Jingyu saw the change in Qinbai's expression. She was delighted. Judging from Qinbai's expression, he seemed to know. You've seen it before? Jingyu looked at Qinbai excitedly and asked, Do you know what it means? I've seen it before. Qinbai seemed to use a lot of strength to suppress the shock in his heart. He pursed his lips and said, I've seen it in the Holy Family Sacrificial Hall, but I don't know what it means. Don't know what it means? When Jingyu heard Qinbai say that he had seen it before, she was very excited. However, when she heard that he didn't know what it meant, the smile on Jingyu's face froze. I don't know. Qinbai shook his head in confusion. He looked at Jingyu and asked, What's wrong? What is it? Where did you get it? Oh, I picked it up. When Jingyu heard Qinbai say that he didn't know, she immediately lost interest. She lowered her head helplessly and stopped talking. Qinbai looked at Jingyu and pursed his lips. He didn't say anything either. I'm going out. Jingyu stood up and said, I'll go with you. Qinbai saw Jingyu stand up and quickly said. Jingyu immediately sat up. She frowned and looked at Qinbai. You haven't fully recovered yet. Don't walk around. My body is fine now. Bai stood up and moved his body. He said firmly, I've been lying in bed for a long time. If I don't walk around, I won't be able to walk anymore. It's not that serious. Jingyu looked at Bai helplessly and said, I'll ask Gu. If he says you can go, I'll take you. Jingyu went to ask Gu. After learning about some special things to take note of, Bai finally got permission to go to the forest with Jingyu. Bai naturally couldn't dress so casually. Chapter 1084. After changing into a set of tight-fitting black clothes, he followed Jingyu out. Jingyu and Bai walked towards the other side of the forest. After walking for a while, Jingyu climbed on a silver wind's back. She turned to look at Bai and said, Sit on Silver Arrow's back. Don't pull on its fur, or it will get angry. Bai quietly looked at Silver Arrow, who was standing in front of him. Seeing Silver Arrow lower its body slightly, a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. He raised his head slightly and looked at Jingyu. Sit on it. Jingyu looked at Bai's dumbfounded expression and smiled faintly. She said, Silver Arrow won't bite you. Fine. Bai looked as if he did not want to. He was a bit scared as he sat on the back of the Silver Arrow. The Silver Arrow carried Bai's body and stood up. The weight made the Silver Arrow uncomfortable. It had never been ridden by a man before. However, it had no choice but to obey Jingyu's orders. Let's go. Jingyu looked at Bai and instructed Silver Arrow and Silver Wind to run into the forest. Bai sat on Silver Arrow's back and swayed left and right, making Silver Arrow very uncomfortable. Bai, just do it like riding a horse. Keep your body low. Jingyu looked at Bai's disheveled appearance and smiled faintly as she called out to him. Bai heard Jingyu's words and looked at Jingyu's actions as she rode Silver Wind. He followed suit and clamped his feet slightly on Silver Arrow's abdomen, pressing his body forward. Only then did he feel much more comfortable. Huh? Jingyu smiled faintly as she watched Jin chase after her. Compared to the Black Shilin, the two gray wolves, Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, were obviously much more agile. Their movements were extremely fast. The two gray wolves shuttled through the forest with two people on their backs, which made Bai feel an indescribable thrilling pleasure. Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, the two gray wolves, could clearly identify the obstacles in front of them in this forest and easily avoid them. Their vigorous figures and fast speed made Bai gasp in amazement. After running for a while, the two gray wolves finally ran side by side. You're a fast learner. Jingyu looked at Bai, who was already learning. She had a faint smile on her face as she spoke. It's because you taught me well. A rare faint smile appeared on Bai's calm face. Looking at the smile on Bai's face, she suddenly felt as if an iceberg had melted and a spring breeze blew in her face. Surprise flashed across Jingyu's eyes. Looking at Bai, she finally discovered the difference between Bai and Number 9. Although the two of them looked the same, their auras were different. Number 9 gave people the feeling that she was very ordinary and very close, while Bai gave people the feeling that he was high and mighty and kept people thousands of miles away. Even after interacting with Bai for so long, Jingyu still felt that Bai seemed a little cold. Only in that moment did Jingyu suddenly feel as if she saw herself in Bai's eyes. Let's take a break. Jingyu and Bai stopped by a spring. Jingyu raised her hand and patted Wind's head, letting the two big guys rest in the river. She stood on a big rock and looked into the distance, as if trying to determine the direction. Chapter 1085. Jingyu, where are we going? Bai looked at Jingyu and realized that he hadn't asked Jingyu where they were going. We're going to find the Pride of Lions. Jingyu stood on a high place and heard Bai's question. She smiled faintly and turned to look at Bai. Jingyu's words shocked Bai. What's wrong? Are you scared? Jingyu jumped down from the boulder and looked at Bai. Aren't you a member of the Holy Family? Don't you know what I'm capable of? Jingyu walked towards Bai as she spoke. Her dark eyes suddenly turned into a bright golden color. The golden color was like a flame and was so dazzling. She stared at Qinbai and smiled faintly. Qinbai looked at Jingyu's eyes and frowned slightly. I'm just a little surprised, huh? Jingyu looked at Qinbai and assumed that he was frightened. She looked happy and pursed her lips. Don't worry, I won't let you get hurt. Jingyu's words shocked Qinbai. He looked at Jingyu's golden eyes and saw the determination in them. Qinbai's heart trembled slightly. He stared at Jingyu and didn't say anything for a long time. Come and drink some water. We'll reach our destination soon. Jingyu looked sideways at Qinbai and said. Qinbai lowered his eyes to hide the light in his eyes. When he turned to look at Jingyu, there was no other meaning in his eyes. Okay. Qinbai squatted down at the mouth of the spring and looked at Jingyu drinking water. He smiled faintly. As he drank the sweet spring water, something in his heart seemed to be watered by the spring water and sprouted little by little. Jingyu and Qinbai rested for a while and continued their search. They walked for a long distance, and it was already noon when they reached their destination. Jingyu and Qinbai sat on Yin Jian and Yin Feng's backs and looked at the plains in the distance and took a deep breath. We're here. Jingyu looked at the familiar plains and smiled faintly. We're here. Qinbai narrowed his eyes and looked at the plains below. He didn't see the pride of lions that Jingyu mentioned. He frowned in confusion and looked at Jingyu. Let's go down from here. Jingyu flipped down from Yin Feng's back and waved at Qinbai. She patted Yin Feng's head and smiled faintly. You two hide first. I'll come find you later. After Jingyu said that, the two big guys whimpered and really disappeared into the forest. Qinbai looked at how obedient Yin Jian and Yin Feng were to Jingyu, and his eyes were filled with shock. Let's go. Jingyu lowered her body and slid down a small path on the side. Standing on the plain, she was blocked by the weeds. Jingyu seemed to be very familiar with it, as she led Jingyu to find a path that could be walked on. Jingyu, why are you so familiar with this place? Qinbai's eyes looked confused. He looked at Jingyu, who had stopped moving, and asked in a small voice. Chapter 1086. When Jingyu heard Qinbai's question, she smiled faintly and said, Of course it's because I've been here before. When Jingyu finished speaking, Qinbai's eyes suddenly revealed a look of understanding. He understood what Jingyu meant and suddenly remembered that Jingyu grew up in the Roman forest. How could she not know about these places? I used to come here often to play with the lions, Jingyu said with a smile. But I always ended up in a miserable state. After saying that, Jingyu stuck out her tongue. She waved at Qinbai, and the two of them went to a mound. Their heads slowly popped out. Qinbai followed Jingyu's gaze, and when he saw the scene in front of him, his eyes widened. The place blocked by the mound was actually a downhill path. On a large plain below, there were countless lions gathered. Those lions with golden fur and incomparably beautiful, for all had their heads raised. Some were walking, some were lying down, and some were playing. They were all gathered at the bottom of the hill. Do you see it? A pride of lions. Jingyu's eyes lit up and she said, When I was young, Yin Jian, Yin Feng, and I accidentally broke into this place and alarmed the lions here. We were immediately surrounded and chased out. Later on, I couldn't take this lying down and came to harass them time and time again. But every time, I was chased with my life on the line. Jingyu smiled proudly and said, But at that time, I almost burned their fur, so I managed to get back at them. Cough, cough. When Qinbai heard Jingyu's words, a deep smile appeared on his face. He looked at Jingyu and shook his head helplessly. It was as if he saw Jingyu's mischievous look. Qinbai, stay here and don't move. Jingyu tilted her head slightly to look at Qinbai and said, If you run away later, don't even look back when I call you. These lions have a strong sense of territory. As long as you run into the forest and out of the plain, they won't chase after you. Jingyu looked at Qinbai seriously and said, Don't worry, I won't mess around. If I can't beat them, I'll run. Jingyu, what do you want to do? Do you want to take revenge? Qinbai looked at Jingyu and frowned slightly as he asked Jingyu, Why would I? Jingyu looked at Qinbai in amusement and said, I want to turn this pride of lions into my support. Jingyu narrowed her eyes and said with a determined look in her eyes. You. When Qin Bai heard Jingyu's words, his expression changed instantly. He narrowed his eyes and said, Do you want to subdue this pride of lions? Just like Yin Jian and Yin Feng? That's right. A cold look appeared in Jingyu's eyes as she said faintly, Wait here. How will you know the result if you try it out? After Jingyu said this, she turned her head and smiled brightly at Qin Bai. That bright smile was even more dazzling than the sun. In the moment that Qin Bai was in a daze, he saw Jingyu moving down the slope like a cat. Jingyu? Qin Bai's heart tightened. He reached out to grab Jingyu, but he was a step too slow. Jingyu was still moving down. As she approached, Qin Bai's expression suddenly tensed up. Chapter 1087. Although Jingyu had different pupils, she had not received any training and did not know how to use them properly. Would Jingyu really succeed in front of hundreds and thousands of lions? Qin Bai narrowed his eyes and stared at Jingyu with his dark eyes. At this moment, Qin Bai felt strange. He wanted Jingyu to succeed, but he also wanted Jingyu to fail. Jingyu's petite body approached the lions silently. There were too many weeds, and Jingyu's figure was almost completely blocked. As she walked forward, she could only see the weeds swaying. Jingyu was like a venomous snake lying in ambush in the dark. She stared at the things in front of her with a hunting look in her eyes. The wind blew at the grass, causing it to sway slightly. Jingyu narrowed her eyes slightly. Her golden eyes looked at the lion that was getting closer and closer. This lion was the leader of the pride. As long as she could conquer this lion, she would have won half the battle. Jingyu's thoughts were very simple. She naturally wanted to subdue the lion. However, it was obvious that Jingyu had overestimated her ability to conceal herself. That was why she gently took a step forward. The lion that had its back facing Jingyu suddenly turned its head. Oh my God! Jingyu's eyes widened when she saw the lion turn around. Roar! When the lion saw Jingyu, it let out a shocking roar. This roar immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding lions. Jingyu's eyes widened and revealed a look of astonishment. It's not the Lion King? Jingyu looked at the lion, and her mouth twitched. She had made such a big mistake. The lion in front of her was not the Lion King. She had recognized it wrongly? Could it be twins? Jingyu's eyes revealed a look of guilt, and she stepped back silently. She did not dare to act rashly when she found that it was not the Lion King. She stepped back silently and was ready to run at any time. Brother, calm down, calm down. Jingyu stepped back silently and muttered to the fierce-looking lion. Jingyu had only taken a few steps back when she heard a low roar behind her. She turned her head silently and realized that she was completely surrounded. All the lions were surrounding Jingyu one by one. Oh my God! Jingyu looked at the lions that were surrounding her and narrowed her eyes. She gritted her teeth and said, I don't care. I'll fight it out. As soon as Jingyu's words fell, her golden eyes flashed instantly. With the fastest speed, she rushed towards the closest lion in front of her. She bent her body and went to the side of the lion. With a flip of her body, she rode on the lion's back. She raised her hand and grabbed the fur on the lion's back and pulled it to one side. The lion cried out in pain and then rushed in a direction. The lions that were surrounding her were all scattered, and they all chased after the lion on Jingyu's back. More and more lions were pouncing over. Jingyu was almost standing on the lion's back. However, she could not really stand on it. If the lion swung her hard, Jingyu would fly out. Chapter 1088. The corner of Jingyu's mouth twitched fiercely, and she rushed to the side. Fortunately, she had learned some skills from riding Silver Arrow and Silver Wind all day. If she didn't give way, she wouldn't be able to get on the lion's back. Qin Bai's hands were almost about to tear the soil under his hands. Seeing Jingyu riding on a lion, he was shocked. The lions that were biting from the side were almost biting Jingyu's feet, but they couldn't bite her. Come here! Jingyu pulled the fur on the lion's head. The lion was originally charging towards the hill, but Jingyu didn't let it go up. She pulled its fur and ran in circles on the grassland. Behind her, a group of lions chased after her frantically. Jingyu was not in a hurry and just let it run around. Her pair of golden eyes searched for the figure she had been looking for in the pride of lions behind her, the king of the pride. Wolves had a leader, lions had a king. As long as she could conquer the Lion King, Jingyu would be one step closer to success. Jingyu's sharp eyes were paying attention to the movements of the pride of lions. From their attacks to the direction they ran, they were all learned. Lions were social animals, even more so in the Roman forest. Jingyu could always identify the Lion King's position at a glance. Today, it was an accident. It was purely an accident. Jingyu looked at herself with disdain. She had messed up at such a critical moment. Now, there were so many lions running. It was going to take a lot of effort to find them. While Jingyu was dodging and controlling the direction, she was still looking for the Lion King. Qinbai, who was standing on the hill, seemed to be moving. Jingyu looked at Qinbai and said anxiously, "Qinbai, don't move." Qinbai, who wanted to stand still, suddenly froze. Looking at Jingyu's diving figure, he frowned slightly. Why did he hear another meaning in Jingyu's words? Was she asking him to be held back? Qinbai's face darkened slightly. He finally squatted on the ground and continued to watch Jingyu's movements. Jingyu had just finished shouting at Qinbai when she found the lion she was looking for. It was a huge lion with white spots on its forehead. It was a lion with glossy fur and was following beside Jingyu. The lions all moved away from it. Everyone was changing their movements regularly. Only this lion seemed to be in a protected position. It seemed to be outside the pride, but also seemed to be the center of the pride. Jingyu knew that this lion was the one she was looking for. Her eyes flashed faintly as she closed in on the Lion King. The lion seemed to have sensed Jingyu's movements. They chased and bit even more fiercely. Jingyu couldn't dodge in time, and a piece of her clothes was bitten off. Jingyu's face darkened slightly. She looked at the distance and immediately let go. Under Qinbai's astonished gaze, Jingyu landed on the ground. She suddenly rolled and rushed in the direction of the Lion King. The lions that were chasing Jingyu all came to an emergency stop and swarmed towards Jingyu. However, Jingyu escaped and the lions collided with each other. Chapter 1089. Ah, so silly. Jingyu smiled and rolled under the belly of a lion. She agilely flipped up, aimed at the Lion King, and rode on its body again. Roar! The Lion King was much more ferocious than the lion from before. The moment Jingyu went up, she was almost thrown down. Her legs clamped tightly onto the Lion King's stomach as she leaned back and suddenly turned around. Damn, it's so ferocious. Jingyu felt a lingering fear in her heart. She put away her playful thoughts and grabbed the Lion King's fur. She twisted it violently to one side, wanting to flip the Lion King over. Unfortunately, her strength was too weak. He could only make the Lion King turn around and run wildly again. Jingyu's strength had been reduced by more than half. At this moment, she was really out of strength. She could only stabilize her body and let the Lion King struggle wildly. It wanted to throw Jingyu off, but it couldn't. So why bother? Jingyu sighed silently. She couldn't be bothered with the lion and let it run. Anyway, it was fine as long as it didn't get thrown off. After struggling for a long time, Jingyu didn't move at all. However, the lion was very angry. It turned and rushed to the top of the hill, wanting to rush up the tree. Jingyu was shocked when she saw the Lion King's actions. This lion was really not afraid of death. The corner of Jingyu's mouth twitched fiercely. She pulled hard with her hand and pulled the lion in the wrong direction. Taking advantage of this inertia, she fiercely flipped the lion to the ground. Her knee pressed against its mouth, and her hand pressed down hard on its head. Hey, big guy, are you convinced? Jingyu's eyes flashed with golden light. She was proud and passionate like a king on the grassland. When she looked at the Lion King, the two pairs of eyes that were so similar made the Lion King let out a soft whimper from his throat. Are you convinced? Jingyu narrowed her eyes and said with a faint smile. The Lion King was pressed to the ground by Jingyu and couldn't move. It could only let out a low growl from its throat. The lions that were chasing after them all surrounded Jingyu. They looked at Jingyu with vigilance, as if they were ready to charge at any time. Jingyu looked at the group of lions and narrowed her eyes slightly. Her golden eyes flashed with a warning look. Jingyu's hand touched the Lion King that was pressed to the ground. She seemed to be able to clearly feel the consciousness coming from its body. Remember? Jingyu lowered her head and looked at the lion. She narrowed her eyes and curled her lips. She slowly let go of her hand and said, "If you want to look good, I'll let you get up if you're willing to admit defeat, and let me ride you willingly." Whoa! Roar! After the Lion King heard Jingyu's words, it roared unwillingly. The displeasure in its voice was very obvious, and there was a hint of struggle in its voice. "Oh! You still want to resist?" Jingyu had a faint smile in her eyes. She calmly let go of the Lion King's hand and said, "Okay, if you don't accept it, I'll beat you until you do." Qinbai was happy to see Jingyu subduing the Lion King, but he didn't expect that Jingyu would release the Lion King after a short while. She looked at the Lion King with a smile. Chapter 1090. Come, I'll let you do it. Jingyu looked at the Lion King in front of her, and a deep smile appeared in her eyes. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she said, "I would like to see what abilities you have." Roar! The Lion King was the king of the lions. Since when had he been looked down upon? It immediately became angry. Its roar was loud and clear, and it bit towards Jingyu ferociously. The sharp fangs made Jingyu widen her eyes slightly, and she jumped to the side of the plane. Its agile body dodged left and right, and from time to time, it would jump onto a lion's body and jump left and right as if it was playing. It watched as the lions rolled on the ground in order to catch it, stirring up a mess in the quiet plains. Jingyu repeated the same trick and jumped on the Lion King's back. Her speed was amazing. Qinbai squatted on the hill and watched as the Lion King was flipped to the ground by Jingyu time and time again. Jingyu released him again and again before he was flipped over again. Jingyu seemed to be more than tired. The Lion King was also very persistent. Finally, after Qinbai lost count of how many times Jingyu pressed the Lion King to the ground, the surrounding lions stopped moving. They looked at each other and turned to look at Jingyu. "How is it? Are you convinced now?" There was a faint smile in Jingyu's eyes. She was panting slightly as she pressed down on the Lion King, who had fallen to the ground, and asked with a faint smile. Roar! The Lion King let out a weak roar and finally relaxed its body in an incomparably weak state. "You should have said so earlier. If you had said so earlier, why did you have to suffer so much?" Jingyu rolled her eyes helplessly as a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She slowly released her hand and watched the Lion King shake off the weeds on his body before standing up. "Sigh, I'm so tired." Jingyu sighed deeply and swung her sore arms. She watched as the Lion King stood up and blinked his golden eyes at her. His face was full of grievance. It seemed to be accusing Jingyu of making it lose face in front of the pride. How is it going to survive in the future? Don't worry, don't worry." Jingyu calmly patted the Lion King's head and said, "I won't blame you if you lose to me. If they don't accept it, they can challenge you again." Roar! The Lion King became even more resentful when he heard Jingyu's words. "Come, let me go up." Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile as she looked sideways at the Lion King. Jingyu's words made the Lion King very unhappy, and he snorted a few times. However, when he saw Jingyu's golden eyes, he seemed to be afraid of something. He had just been thrown down so many times. It was really painful, okay. The Lion King hesitated for a moment before he silently knelt down and lowered his head towards Jingyu. Jingyu looked at the Lion King's actions, and a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She turned around and climbed onto the Lion King's back. Only then did the Lion King stand up. Jingyu, who was originally fierce to the Lion King, saw Jingyu sitting on the Lion King's back and immediately scattered to the side. They watched as Jingyu walked forward steadily. Wherever Jingyu and the Lion King went, all the lions avoided them. The heads of the lions slowly drooped down. The golden light in Jingyu's eyes became even brighter. Her eyes flickered with a faint coldness. Chapter 1091. Qinbai had never seen such a soul-stirring scene. The woman sitting on the Lion King was dressed in tight black clothes and had a pair of golden eyes that were identical to the lion's. The figure sitting on the Lion King was like a king patrolling the mortal world. At this moment, Jingyu's radiance was unstoppable. Jingyu closed her eyes slightly and clearly felt the pride of lions on the plains entering her senses. This feeling was extremely familiar to Jingyu. After quietly closing her eyes for a moment, Jingyu slowly opened them. Her eyes were filled with joy, as though she was a king who had won a victory. Jingyu suddenly shouted, "Charge!" The originally quiet pride of lions seemed to have received Jingyu's order. At this moment, all the lions madly rushed in the direction of Qinbai. Their eyes were filled with ferocity. Qinbai looked at the pride of lions that were rushing over with astonishment in his eyes. For a moment, he stood on the spot, not knowing whether to hide or not. Qinbai frowned slightly as he looked at Jingyu's incomparably calm gaze. He didn't have any other thoughts. For some reason, Qinbai suddenly trusted Jingyu very much. Jingyu would never let anything happen to him. Thinking about that, Qinbai quietly stood in the distance. He did not move. He looked at the lions rushing toward him, and he did not look like he was going to dodge. Jingyu looked at Qinbai's face. Her eyes did not look like she was going to dodge. When the pride of lions arrived in front of Qinbai, it was as though they couldn't see Qinbai. They whistled past Qinbai like the wind without stopping at all. Huh? Jingyu's joyful laughter sounded in his ears. It sounded on the plains like the wind blowing past. Qinbai slowly turned around and looked in the direction of Jingyu. Seeing Jingyu sitting on the Lion King and galloping on the plains with a large group of lions following behind her, this scene was deeply imprinted in Qinbai's heart. Those pitch-black eyes stared at Jingyu's figure, and a different expression flashed in his eyes. It was so deep and silent. Qinbai. Jingyu rode the Lion King and stopped in front of Qinbai. She flipped over and got off the Lion King's back. Her golden eyes curved slightly, and a beautiful smile appeared on her face. She blinked at Qinbai and said, "Did you see that? I did it. Congratulations." Qinbai looked at Jingyu's joyful appearance, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He looked at Jingyu and said, "You surprised me. Ha ha. There's more to come." Jingyu proudly raised her head and patted the Lion King's head. She said, "You guys wait here and wait for me to come find you." Roar. The Lion King seemed to be very unhappy and roared. "Oh!" Jingyu glared at the Lion King and said, "What's wrong? Haven't you been beaten enough?" Woo! The Lion King looked at Jingyu's frightening expression and silently lowered its head. Jingyu looked at the Lion King's appearance and happily patted its head. She said, "That's right. Don't worry, I won't treat you badly if you follow me." Qinbai stood to the side and looked at Jingyu, who seemed to be very happy with the Lion King. Although he didn't know how Jingyu communicated with the Lion King, he inexplicably felt the Lion King's human emotions when he saw Jingyu's appearance. It was so clear. Chapter 1092. Let's go. Jingyu finally retracted her hand and watched the Lion King lead the pride down the hill. After returning to their original position, Jingyu turned to look at Qinbai. Qinbai raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded in agreement. Jingyu walked in front. When Qinbai turned around, he squinted his eyes and glanced sideways at the pride of lions at the bottom of the hill. He quickened his pace and stood beside Jingyu. He asked curiously, "How did you do it?" "Ah?" When Jingyu heard Qinbai's question, she blinked her eyes and said in a conflicted tone, "I don't know how I did it, but I know I can do it." When Qinbai heard Jingyu's answer, his eyes narrowed, but he didn't say anything. "Where are we going now?" Qinbai and Jingyu walked into the forest and returned to where they came from. Qinbai narrowed his eyes and asked Jingyu, "Let's go back." Jingyu replied faintly and said, "I'm very tired now. I want to go back and rest." Jingyu raised her hand to her mouth and blew a clear whistle. The two gray wolves, Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, who had fled into the forest, rushed back to Jingyu's side. Tired, Qinbai looked sideways at Jingyu and asked, "What happened just now? Are you hurt?" "No." Jingyu shook her head helplessly and said, "I often feel this kind of tiredness. It's not physical tiredness, but mental tiredness. It clearly tells me that I can't do anything else now. I need to rest." "Oh." Qinbai seemed to understand and responded. Looking at Jingyu's appearance, she really didn't talk much. She was silent the whole way and allowed Silver Arrow and Silver Wind to lead the way. On the wide plains, after Jingyu and Qinbai left, light footsteps slowly sounded. A pair of black boots stepped on the muddy ground, and the corners of the black robe fluttered in a cold arc. The tall figure was dressed in ink-black clothes, and a pair of cold and dark eyes quietly looked at the pride of lions below. He closed his eyes slightly, as if he was reminiscing about something. Listening to the sound of the wind, it was as if he could hear the pleasant laughter echoing in his ears. There was a ripple in the air, and a black shadow silently appeared behind the man. He bowed and knelt on the ground as he called out, "Master, everything is ready." A calm and cold voice sounded. Under the setting sun, there seemed to be a strong sense of longing, and also seemed to be filled with a deep murderous intent. At the bottom of the hill, almost all the lions stood up. Pairs of golden eyes looked at the man, and there was a kind of fear in their eyes, as if they had seen their natural enemy. The man standing in the night breeze looked at the distant horizon with his pitch-black eyes. He calmly and deeply said, "Soon?" These words were like a trembling sigh that tugged at one's heartstrings. Jingyu and Qinbai went back and forth for a long time. When they returned to their residence, the sun was already setting in the west. After Jingyu returned to her residence, she fell asleep. Qingu was curious about what Jingyu had done, so he pulled Qinbai and asked. When he found out that Jingyu had gone to tame the pride of lions, he was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. Chapter 1093. Seeing Jingyu fall asleep, he frowned slightly. He didn't know what was wrong with her. Qingu was worried about Jingyu, so he went into the room to check her pulse. However, Jingyu's pulse was stable. There was nothing wrong with her. She was really just asleep. "Qingu, did Jingyu do this in the past?" Qingu was sitting outside, changing the bandages on Qinbai's wounds. Qinbai was still thinking about the scene of Jingyu taming the lions. He frowned slightly and looked at Qingu. "I'm not sure either." Qingu changed the bandages on Qinbai's wounds as he said, "I heard Ninth Brother mention that when Jingyu first used her different pupils to tame the vicious sharks at the bottom of the sea, she fell into a coma. He asked me why, but I couldn't find anything wrong with her even after I checked countless times. After thinking about it, I felt that this might be a common occurrence when someone's different pupils were activated, so I didn't think much of it." Qingu straightened up slightly. Qinbai pursed his lips when he heard Qingji's answer. "What's wrong? Why do you look like you're very interested in Ninth Sister's different pupils?" Qingu asked as he stared at Qinbai strangely. "Of course." Qinbai smiled and looked at Qingu with clear eyes. "I'm a member of the Holy Family. Searching for a girl with different pupils is the mission of the Holy Family. Now that I've seen her, I'm naturally curious. Please don't take offense." Qingu smiled awkwardly and said, "I don't mean to discriminate against you. I was just casually asking." "It's okay." Qinbai didn't seem to care, but he really didn't say anything else. After Qingu changed the bandages on Qinbai's wounds, he went to the back of the mountain to pick herbs. After entering the Roman forest, Qingu was probably the happiest person besides Jingyu. The mountain full of herbs made Qingu very happy. Every day, when he was free, he would bring his guards into the mountain to pick herbs. The sky gradually darkened. After sitting outside for a while, Qinbai walked into Jingyu's room. When he stepped into the room, he saw Jingyu sleeping soundly on the bed. Her eyes were tightly closed, and she was quiet. There was a slight change in Qinbai's eyes. He slowly walked to Jingyu's bedside and sat down. His eyes wandered over Jingyu's face and finally landed on Jingyu's tightly closed eyes. He suddenly thought of the scene he saw on the plains today. The woman sitting on the Lion King's back and laughing. The woman with a pair of golden eyes that shone with a dazzling light. Jingyu. Qin Bai's eyes deepened. His gaze moved to Jingyu's finger. The imprint on her middle finger was very clear. Qin Bai's eyes narrowed slightly. He raised his hand to hold Jingyu's hand and gently stroked the imprint on her middle finger. Life and death together. Qin Bai's voice had an inexplicable meaning. There was a slight change in his expression as he quietly watched Jingyu. Oh! Jingyu was in a deep sleep. She seemed to be dreaming of something. She turned over and moved her body. She frowned slightly and withdrew her hand from Qin Bai's grasp. Qin Bai's body stiffened slightly. He stared at Jingyu's movements and pursed his lips slightly. Xiao Chun. Jingyu's lips moved slightly as she called out a name. Qin Bai's expression suddenly turned cold. Qin Bai's eyes changed slightly. His thin lips pursed slightly. He stared at Jingyu for a long while before he slowly stood up. He looked down at Jingyu with a pair of cold eyes. Chapter 1094. His aura was so extraordinary that it was different from the usual Qin Bai. The first ray of sunlight in the morning shone on Jingyu's face. Jingyu frowned slightly and opened her misty eyes to look around. She seemed to have slept for a long time and finally woke up. She sat up and rubbed her neck. I slept for a long time. Jingyu rubbed her neck, stood up, and walked out of the house. It was already lively outside the house. Qin Bai and Qin Gu were sitting outside and seemed to be talking about something. When they heard something behind them, they turned their heads and saw Jingyu, who had just woken up. Ninth sister, you're finally awake. Qin Gu saw that Jingyu was still sleepy. He shook his head helplessly and said, Why are you getting more and more sleepy? I don't know. Jingyu sat down beside Qin Gu. She raised her hand and took a sip of spring water from the bamboo jar. Only then did she feel much better. She let out a deep sigh and said, I finally feel much better. Could it be that he's sick? Qin Gu looked at Jingyu in confusion. He felt Jingyu's pulse again, but the diagnosis was still the same. AI. It's really strange. Qin Gu stared at Jingyu and said, She's very healthy. Okay. Jingyu shook off Qin Ji's hand and said, I'm just tired and slept for a while. What can happen? Okay. Qin Gu couldn't explain why Jingyu was like this. He helplessly lowered his head and agreed. After the three of them sat together and talked for a while, Jingyu was about to go out again. Qin Bai naturally asked to go with her. This time, Jingyu took Qin Bai in a different direction. The place they were going to was not a plain, but a forest. Qin Bai had the experience of the last time. This time, he was almost patient and followed Jingyu to a forest. We're here. At this time, Jingyu and Qin Bai were sitting outside a forest. They stuck their heads out slightly and looked straight ahead. A group of tigers. Qin Bai looked over and saw a group of tigers with patterns all over their bodies. Each of them was safely nested in the forest. His eyes widened slightly, and he looked sideways at Jingyu, who was eager to try. Wait for me here. When I tell you to run, run down the mountain diagonally. Jingyu looked sideways at Qin Bai and said, after running for a distance, climb up a tree and don't move. Qin Bai frowned slightly. He thought about what happened yesterday and frowned slightly, but he agreed. Once again, he saw Jingyu put on a battle between a human and a tiger. However, today, Jingyu was obviously not in the right state. It was not as smooth as yesterday. Oh my God! Jingyu did not manage to tame the tigers today. Instead, she angered them. Qin Bai looked on helplessly as Jingyu was chased up and down by the group of tigers. She was almost out of strength. Finally, she could not stand it anymore and rushed towards Qin Bai. Run! Jingyu shouted. Qin Bai had already reacted. He immediately turned and ran. The two of them ran down the hill as if their lives depended on it. The tigers chased after Jingyu. Jingyu and Qin Bai quickly rushed to the bottom of the hill. Then they climbed up a tree and stopped moving. Chapter 1095. They watched as the tiger whizzed past them. Then, as if it had lost its target, or as if it didn't want to chase after it, it returned. That was close. Qinbai and Jingyu were hiding in the leaves of the tree. The two of them were so close that Jingyu was so focused on the movements below that she didn't notice the distance between the two of them. Yeah, Qinbai replied faintly. His arm held onto the branch to prevent the two of them from falling. Let's stay up here for a while. Jingyu took a deep breath and said, These tigers are very sneaky. Yeah, Qinbai replied again. Just as Qinbai replied, they saw with their own eyes that the tiger, which had originally left, came back again. Jingyu and Qinbai were so shocked that their bodies stiffened and they didn't move. The two of them stayed on the tree for a long time. They clearly saw that the tiger had circled around the area. Then of all things, it lay down under the tree that Jingyu and Qinbai were in. The moment she saw the tiger lying down leisurely, Jingyu felt as if 10,000 alpacas were galloping through her heart. There was only one thought in her mind. If she managed to tame this tiger, then the first thing she would do was to fucking beat it up. Because the tiger was below them. Qinbai and Jingyu didn't dare to move at all. They could only sit stiffly on the tree trunk. They could hear each other's breathing and their respective heartbeats. It was so strong. The two of them were so close that Jingyu frowned slightly. She turned her head to look at Qinbai. She seemed to have sensed that the two of them were too close and was trying to increase the distance between them. Don't move. Qinbai seemed to have sensed Jingyu's movement and said with a slight frown. Jingyu's body stiffened. She lowered her head slightly and saw that the tiger, which had originally been lying down quietly, seemed to have sensed some movement. It raised its head slightly. Jingyu immediately lowered her breathing. The surroundings were silent. Jingyu and Qinbai were frozen and didn't move at all. After pausing for a long time, they saw the tiger move its body. It moved outside. Jingyu and Qinbai had been frozen for a long time. Now they dared to move. Jingyu's legs were numb from squatting for so long. Hiss! Jingyu slowly stood up. She held onto the tree trunk and turned her head to look at Qinbai. If Qinbai hadn't held onto the tree trunk from behind, Jingyu wouldn't have lost so much strength. Thank you. Jingyu turned her head to look at Qinbai. She didn't expect that Qinbai would be so close to her. Jingyu was so shocked that she hurriedly retreated. However, the two of them were standing on the tree trunk. If she retreated, they would fall. Be careful. Qinbai looked at Jingyu's falling body. His eyes trembled slightly. He raised his hand and grabbed onto Jingyu's waist. Jingyu was awakened by Qinbai's warning, but it was too late. The two of them fell straight down. Qinbai raised his hand and grabbed onto the tree trunk. However, because he was too slow, his hand slipped and he fell down with Jingyu in his arms. The two of them rolled down the hill and into the grass forest. Jingyu was protected in Qinbai's arms. His hand was behind Jingyu's head. The two of them rolled for a distance before stopping. Chapter 1096. Jingyu felt dizzy. She looked at Qinbai, who was on top of her. His hands were behind her head, and he was hugging her waist tightly. In that instant, Jingyu's vision suddenly blurred. For a moment, she actually thought that the person hugging her was Xiaochun. How familiar was this scene? Back in the Imperial City, when she was admiring the wild chrysanthemums on the hill, Xiaochun had protected her as they rolled down the hill. Xiaochun. Jingyu's eyes lit up as she softly called out his name. Qinbai's body suddenly stiffened, and he slowly lifted his head from Jingyu's body. Qinbai quietly looked at Jingyu in the middle of the grassy forest. His pitch-black eyes were filled with an unknown emotion. It seemed like anger, unwillingness, and a fierce aura that Jingyu couldn't understand. Jingyu, Qinbai called out softly. When Jingyu heard Qinbai's call, she seemed to have realized something. Her eyes widened as she looked at Qinbai, who was still on top of her. She suddenly raised her hand and pushed Qinbai away. Hiss! When Jingyu pushed him so hard, Qinbai's wound was pulled. He frowned slightly and sucked in a breath of cold air. I'm sorry. When Jingyu saw Qin Bai's reaction, her expression changed slightly. She pursed her lips and said a few words before turning around and running away. Jingyu ran straight ahead for a long distance. Qin Bai could only watch as Jingyu ran far away. Jingyu, who was sitting on a rock on the hill, quietly enjoyed the breeze. She raised her hand to cover her heart. She had never felt so uncomfortable before. It wasn't Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun was already dead. Dead. Jingyu slowly closed her eyes and buried her head in them. She didn't say a word. Qin Bai covered his wound and walked for a long time before he saw Jingyu sitting on a rock. A deep look appeared in his eyes, and he clenched his fists slightly. Jingyu lowered her head and buried her face in her arms. She sat there quietly, without moving at all. Jingyu. Qin Bai's voice rang in Jingyu's ears. He slowly placed his hand on Jingyu's shoulder. Jingyu trembled and looked up at Qin Bai. Under the sunlight, Jingyu... I'm fine. Jingyu slowly lowered her head and didn't say a word. Qin Bai stood beside Jingyu and didn't say a word. He was like a silent guardian. Jingyu didn't know if it was an illusion, but after Qin Bai stood there, Jingyu suddenly felt relaxed. Jingyu slowly suppressed the pain in her heart. She took a deep breath and slowly stood up. Qin Bai, thank you, Jingyu said to Qin Bai, her eyes full of gratitude. Okay. Qin Bai responded and looked up at Jingyu. He took a step back and extended his hand to Jingyu. Jingyu looked at Qin Bai's outstretched hand and was slightly stunned. She tilted her head and said, "Let's go." With that, Jingyu turned and jumped off the rock. Once again, she ran into the grass forest. Qin Bai looked at Jingyu's actions and slowly withdrew his outstretched hand. His expression didn't change, but his hands were clenched tightly. Chapter 1097. Jingyu tried again and again. Qin Bai stood in the distance and watched as Jingyu worked tirelessly to conquer the Tiger King. He clearly saw Jingyu's arm get scratched by the Tiger King's sharp claws. At that moment, the trembling that came from his heart was so clear. A clear feeling called anger spread through Qin Bai's heart. Jingyu couldn't see the stones in his hand and quickly threw them out. He saw Jingyu finally smile and strut around on the Tiger King's back. "Huh, I did it!" Jingyu cheered happily. Her figure leaping through the forest on the Tiger King and her smile under the setting sun unconsciously attracted Qin Bai's heart. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. When Jingyu and Qin Bai returned, the sky was already completely dark. The autumn weather made the night a little chilly. Jingyu pursed her lips slightly and looked at the pitch-black sky. The two gray wolves beside her, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, had a pair of emerald eyes that were especially dazzling in the dark night. Jingyu. Qin Bai followed beside Jingyu and looked at Jingyu's lit torch. He tilted his head slightly and called out to her. Jingyu tilted her head and looked at Qin Bai with some confusion in her eyes. "Nothing." Qin Bai looked at Jingyu's gaze and shook his head slightly. He looked ahead and asked, "How much longer until we reach our destination?" "Let me see." Jingyu narrowed her eyes and looked at the pitch-black forest around them. She frowned. Her black eyes had already turned emerald and were very similar to the eyes of the two gray wolves beside her. Qin Bai saw the change in Jingyu's eyes, and his heart skipped a beat. "There's still some distance left. We've been tired all day. Let's take a rest before continuing." Jingyu took a deep breath and said, "There's a river in front. We can rest for a while." "Okay." Qin Bai nodded slightly when he heard Jingyu's words. The two of them started a fire by the river and sat on a rock. They squinted and looked at the surface of the water in the distance. The grilled fish on the fire emitted a faint fragrance. "Eat some." Jingyu handed the grilled fish to Qin Bai. Qin Bai took it and thanked her. It was quiet all around. Only the sound of the fire could be heard. Qin Bai looked up at Jingyu. "Jingyu, what do you want to do in the future?" Jingyu was a little stunned when she heard Qin Bai's question. She blinked and looked at Qin Bai, not knowing what he meant. "Nothing. I just want to know what you want to do after you get your revenge. Qinbai looked up at Jingyu and asked. Jingyu fell silent when she heard Qinbai's question. She lowered the food in her hand and didn't say anything. Xiaoqun said that after the war ended and they got their revenge, they would travel the world. They would go to all the places they wanted to go. They would never be separated again, and they would have no more worries. However, Jingyu was stunned when she heard Qinbai's question. In the future without Xiaoqun, I don't know. Jingyu stood up slowly. The bitterness in her mouth was unbearable. Jingyu. Qinbai looked at Jingyu, who stood up and suddenly grabbed Jingyu's wrist. His warm palm held Jingyu's hand urgently. Jingyu turned to look at Qinbai. Come with me. In the dark night, Qinbai's gaze was so serious that it surprised Jingyu for a moment. She looked at Qinbai's serious expression, and a strange feeling arose in her heart. Chapter 1098. I meant what I said. Qinbai stared at Jingyu and said, I want to take care of you. As soon as Qinbai said this, Jingyu looked at Qinbai in disbelief. If possible, I want to take care of you for the rest of my life. Qinbai spoke again. It was a very affectionate confession, but Jingyu did not know why. Her heart flashed with an emotion that was very resistant to it. On the other side of that emotion, there was also an incomparable feeling of gratitude, which made Jingyu's mood fall into a very strange state. Jingyu, I'm serious. Qinbai slowly approached Jingyu. Jingyu could clearly smell his unique scent. It was so strange that Jingyu took a step back and shook off Qinbai's hand. Qinbai, are you pitying me? Jingyu clenched her fists and stared at Qinbai. I don't care. Jingyu. Qinbai looked at Jingyu as she turned to leave. He suddenly took a step forward and hugged Jingyu. Are you crazy? Jingyu probably didn't expect Qinbai to hug her so frivolously. She raised her elbow and hit Qinbai in the stomach. Qinbai let go of her in pain and pulled on his wound. He watched as Jingyu turned to leave. Qinbai stood on the spot and panted slightly. He looked in the direction that Jingyu had left. A fierce look appeared in his eyes. He clenched his fists and lowered his head slowly to hide the look in his eyes. Not long after Jingyu left, the bonfire was extinguished and Qinbai disappeared. In a place where Jingyu couldn't see, a dark figure stood under the tree. His back was to the light, so she couldn't see his face. That person seemed to be standing there waiting for someone. His hands were subconsciously moving behind his back. Whoosh! A soft sound was heard. The standing figure tilted his head slightly and looked to the side. A figure slowly appeared behind the tree. That slender figure was obviously a woman. She was wearing black night clothes. My lord! A familiar voice rang out. The figure heard the call behind him and slowly turned his head around. His face was revealed. On a cold and handsome face, there was a pair of calm black eyes. Lingji, why are you here this time? The person standing under the tree was none other than Qinbai, who had just separated from Jingyu. He was dressed in black and had nothing else on him. He just stood there quietly, but his body was surrounded by an incomparably strong aura of nobility. Third Elder asked Lingji to ask my lord what we should do. Lingji bowed slightly in front of Qinbai and replied. When Qinbai heard Lingji's question, he frowned and faintly showed his displeasure. His eyes became colder and colder. He stared at Lingji and said, Didn't I say that I would contact you if there was a plan? My lord, please calm down. Lingji saw the change in Qinbai's expression and her heart trembled violently. She suddenly knelt in front of Qinbai and said, Third Elder is also thinking about your safety. If your identity is exposed, the consequences, I know what I'm doing. Qinbai turned his head indifferently and took a deep breath. He said, Let the people of the Holy Family prepare. There will be a big battle soon. Chapter 1099. Yes. Lingji respectfully bowed her head and replied to Qinbai. Also, Qinbai dragged his voice and said indifferently, After the incident that day, how did Xiaoqun deal with it? Sir, don't worry. Everything is going according to plan. Lingji solemnly replied when she heard Qin Bai's words. That's good. Qin Bai indifferently turned his head and said, Jingyu intends to control 10,000 beasts and form an alliance with the soldiers. Lions, tigers, jackals, and wolves, you should prepare to deal with it. Yes. Lingji bowed her head and said, Then, sir, when will you leave? That's not something you should ask. Qin Bai indifferently replied, and suddenly turned to leave. Lingji suddenly stood up and tightly gripped the sword in her hand. She took a deep breath and said, Third Elder asked me to tell sir. The woman with different pupils is an evil person. I hope that sir can understand and not make the act real. Lingji stared at Qin Bai's back and said. Qin Bai heard Lingji's words, and his body stiffened for a moment. Then, as if he didn't react at all, he walked straight ahead and said, I know what I'm doing. Qin Bai's figure disappeared into the darkness, but the woman still stood in the same place. She took a deep breath and didn't say anything. She tightly gripped the sword in her hand and suddenly turned around. She leaped onto a tree branch and disappeared among the leaves. No one saw this scene, and no one knew what the two of them were talking about. Jingyu didn't return to her residence. Instead, she slept outside with the two gray wolves, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, and looked at the sky in a daze. On the grassy hillside, Jingyu leaned on Yin Jian's back and looked up at the dark sky. There wasn't any fluctuation in her eyes. Yin Feng walked around and laid down beside Jingyu. Its wide tail covered Jingyu's body. It's like we've returned to the past. Jingyu patted Yin Feng's head, and her eyes were dazed for a moment. At that time, they were still young, and Yin Jian and Yin Feng weren't as big as they were now. Their life in the Roman forest was so interesting. They didn't have to worry about anything every day. Xiao Qin's intrusion. Not only did he intrude into her world, but he also intruded into her heart. But why did it come so suddenly? Just when she had finally accepted it with great difficulty, such a thing happened. It came so suddenly, and it left so suddenly. Jingyu clutched her chest tightly and curled herself up. She closed her eyes and trembled slightly. Woo! A soft cry was heard. Yin Jian's head gently nudged Jingyu. Jingyu slowly opened her eyes and looked at Yin Feng with tears in her eyes. I miss him so much, so much. Jingyu bit her lips tightly. No matter how hard she tried to hold back her tears, they overflowed from her eyes and dripped onto Yin Jian's fur. At this moment, the atmosphere became incomparably heavy. Jingyu didn't know how she fell asleep. She only knew that she didn't sleep well in this incomparably cold night. When she was deep in sleep, she felt a pair of hands gently wiping away the tears at the corners of her eyes. Tell her, Jingyu, don't cry. A familiar smell, a familiar voice, a familiar temperature. Chapter 1100. Xiao Chun. Jingyu abruptly opened her eyes and sat up from the ground. However, she froze the moment she opened her eyes. The person who was squatting in front of her had his hands stretched out stiffly and was staring at Jingyu. It's you. Jingyu looked at Qin Bai, who was dressed in black. She lowered her head slightly and hid the anxious expression on her face. Yes. Qin Bai stood up slowly. Seeing that Jingyu had also stood up, he said, Yin Jian brought me here. Oh. Jingyu glanced at Yin Jian beside her and replied expressionlessly. Yesterday. I'm sorry. Qin Bai looked at Jingyu with a complicated expression. He pursed his lips and said, I was rude. I'm sorry. It's fine. Jingyu stood up and patted Yin Jian's head. It's time to go back. We haven't returned for a night. If we don't go back now, Qinggu will probably cause a commotion and come looking for us. Okay. Qin Bai looked at Jingyu's back and pursed his lips slightly. The two of them rode the gray wolf back to their residence. They immediately saw Qinggu standing at the door with an extremely anxious expression. Jingyu shook her head helplessly. This person was really a mother who worried about things. My little ancestor, where did the two of you run off to? Jingyu and Qin Bai heard Qingji's words as they approached. Jingyu flipped over and looked at Qinggu. We were a little late. What's wrong? This young master didn't sleep the entire night. I was worried about the two of you, Chingu said, as if he had been wronged. He pointed at his eyes and said, "Look at my eyes. Look, it's all bruised." "Ah, you were beaten up?" Jingyu looked at Chingu happily and said with a smile, "What do you mean he was beaten up?" Chingu was quite indignant and wanted to say something, but Jingyu raised her hand and stopped him. "Stop joking around. Let's get to work." "What's wrong?" Chingu asked when he saw Jingyu's serious expression. "Where's Li Weiming? When are you coming?" Jingyu asked as she walked in. "They should be here in about an hour." Chingu nodded and followed Jingyu inside. He asked, "What happened? Did the people outside come in?" "No." Jingyu replied calmly and said, "You'll know later. When Li Weiming arrives, tell him to come see me. Also, where's Jinhai?" Chingu heard Jingyu's question and was slightly surprised. He looked at Jingyu and asked, "Do you mean Jinhai, who can make saddles?" "Yes." Jingyu nodded and walked into the room. She looked sideways at a soldier and said, "Go find me some charcoal." "Yes." The soldier answered and walked out quickly. Chingu looked at Jingyu and widened his eyes slightly. He said, "Ninth sister-in-law, are you going to train another group of people like the Black Qilin?" Jingyu heard Qingji's question and smiled faintly. She said, "Who said I was going to train another group?" "Eh?" Chingu stared at Jingyu, his eyes full of questions. "What I want to do is to train all the soldiers into the 10,000 beast army." Jingyu's eyes shone brightly, and the look in her eyes made Qingji's eyes widen. Chapter 1101. What? For a moment, Chingu thought that he was hallucinating. He stared at Jingyu in disbelief and asked, Don't just stand there. Help me look after Li Weiming. Tell him to come see me when he's here." Jingyu didn't want to waste time talking to Chingu. She waved Chingu aside in disdain. I. Just as Chingu was about to say something, the soldier had already brought charcoal over. Jingyu no longer bothered with Chingu. She picked up charcoal from the side and began to draw on the paper. Chingu stood outside the door with a blank expression. He didn't know what Jingyu wanted to do, but Jingyu's words made Qingji's heart tremble. He quickly ran towards Qinbai. "Qinbai?" Qinbai was playing with the bow in his hand when he heard Qingji's call. He turned around in confusion. Quick, tell me, what did you do with Jingyu last night?" Qingu asked Qinbai excitedly. "I went to tame a tiger." Qinbai was silent for a moment. He looked at Qingu calmly and replied. Qingu was stunned at first, then he jumped away in horror. He looked at Qinbai silently and asked, "Then, did you tame it? Or not?" "Of course, I tamed it," Qinbai said under Qingji's serious gaze. Qingu couldn't stay calm for a long time. His brain was spinning rapidly as if he had thought of something terrible. He frowned and sat to the side. Qinbai looked at Qingji's expression and raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't say anything and continued to play with the bow in his hand. His expression was very calm. "A lion and a tiger. What is Jingyu trying to do?" Qingji's expression changed slightly for a moment. "She's going to make the world fall into chaos," Qinbai quietly added. Qingji's face darkened slightly. He looked at Qinbai and sighed helplessly when he saw Qinbai playing with the bow. Jingyu locked herself in the room after coming back. She was lying on the table and drawing. No one knew what she was doing. Qingu was in the courtyard playing with the herbs he picked. Just as Qingu said, Li Weiming appeared with a small group of people after about an hour. "Boss, you were looking for me?" Li Weiming's skin was even more firm than when they first met. He walked in with an imposing manner and stood in front of Jingyu. "You're here?" Jingyu heard Li Weiming's voice. She frowned slightly and raised her head to ask, "Where is Jinhai now?" "Jinhai. He's with General Shangwan now." Li Weiming paused for a moment before replying. "Okay, bring your people and come with me." Jingyu nodded slightly and picked up the scattered papers on the table. "Let's go." "Boss, is there a mission?" Li Weiming looked at Jingyu's expression and was slightly stunned. He then looked at Jingyu excitedly and asked. Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile. You'll know once you follow me. I. Jingyu led Li Weiming and his group in the direction of Shangguan Hongwen. Li Weiming led a group of people on Black Shilin, while Jingyu rode on Silver Arrow. Their speed was not inferior at all. Chapter 1102. The group moved very quickly and arrived at the place where Shangguan Hongwen's troops were. They were still in the middle of training when Jingyu arrived. Everyone stopped what they were doing when Jingyu arrived. Jingyu looked around. It was no different from where she lived. Jingyu raised her eyebrows and nodded at everyone. Then, she walked into Shangguan Hongwen's room. Ninth Imperial Concubine. Shangguan Hongwen saw Jingyu and nodded at Jingyu. General Shangguan. Jingyu nodded. Then she sat down on a chair and said to Shangguan Hongwen, I came here today because I have something to tell General Shangguan. It's very important. Please don't be surprised if you hear it. Shangguan Hongwen was still curious about Jingyu's sudden arrival. When he heard Jingyu's words, he suddenly thought of something and his eyes widened in surprise. I want to train General Shangguan's soldiers into a force similar to the Ma's cavalry. Jingyu stared at Shangguan Hongwen and said. Shangguan Hongwen's heart skipped a beat when he heard Jingyu's words. His eyes widened slightly, and he pursed his lips as he looked at Jingyu in astonishment. What do you need me to do? After a moment of silence, he seemed to be laughing at Jingyu's words. He took a deep breath and looked at Jingyu. General Shangguan doesn't need to do anything. Jingyu smiled. She looked at Shangguan Hongwen and said, You just need to gather the soldiers. Leave the rest to me. Okay. Shangguan Hongwen nodded slowly. He looked at Jingyu and calmed down. Shangguan Hongwen's army gathered together. The soldiers didn't know what was going on. They looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Hongwen in confusion, waiting for them to speak. The enemy is right in front of us. I hope you can understand that your lives are being exchanged by your comrades. Jingyu looked at everyone calmly and said, And now, the first thing you need to do is to fight. I don't want you to rush in. I want you to learn how to defeat the enemy. Jingyu looked at everyone and said, or rather, it's not about defeating the enemy, but how to defeat yourself. Go and defeat yourself. Jingyu's voice wasn't loud, but it was heard by everyone. Before anyone could digest what Jingyu meant, she led everyone into the depths of the forest without saying a word. Everyone was puzzled along the way, not to mention the soldiers. Even Li Weiming, who was at the side, was at a loss. Commander Li, where is the 9th Imperial Concubine taking us? The soldier at the side couldn't suppress the doubt in his heart and asked Li Weiming with a tilt of his head. I don't know. When Li Weiming heard this person's question, he frowned and said with a conflicted expression. Everyone was even more confused when they heard this. They blinked slightly and continued to walk forward. Jingyu was not in a hurry at all and did not say much. She just let everyone follow her all the way and kept walking forward. Chapter 1103. We're almost there. When Jingyu saw Shangguan Hongwen coming over, she seemed to want to ask something, but before Shangguan Hongwen could speak, Jingyu had already spoken first. After Shangguan Hongwen heard this, he silently swallowed the words in his mouth. There's no hurry. Jingyu turned her head again and smiled at Shangguan Hongwen. Yes, there's no hurry. Shangguan Hongwen laughed dryly and didn't say anything else. From where Shangguan Hongwen lived, they walked out of the forest. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the plains. Jingyu and the soldiers stood at the edge of the forest. At a glance, they could see the vast plains. I didn't expect there to be such a large plain in the Roman forest. Shangguan Hongwen's eyes flashed with surprise as he turned his head to look at Jingyu. There are many things you didn't expect. Jingyu walked towards the plain. Everyone followed behind her and walked towards the plain. They looked at the plain and looked around. But why did the 9th Imperial Concubine bring us here? Shangguan Hongwen looked around for a long time, but didn't see anything on the plains. He turned his head and asked Jingyu curiously. Of course I have my reasons. The corners of Jing Yu's mouth curled up slightly. She looked at the crowd and said slowly, "What you need to know next is the reason why I came here. Everything is just the beginning." When Jing Yu finished speaking, everyone turned their heads in confusion. They looked at the people beside them and exchanged glances with each other. Their eyes were filled with confusion. "Come out," Jing Yu said indifferently as she turned around and looked at the empty plains behind her. "What's that?" "I don't know." Everyone heard Jing Yu shout, and their eyes were filled with confusion. They looked behind Jing Yu. Under everyone's gaze, a lion with glossy fur slowly walked out from behind Jing Yu with steady steps. "Ah, lion, lion." The moment the lion appeared, the soldiers in front of Jing Yu immediately drew their swords. Jing Yu looked at their actions and raised her eyebrows slightly without saying anything. Li Weiming was also shocked by the sudden appearance of the lion. However, when he saw Jing Yu's expressionless face, he silently suppressed the shock in his heart. He guessed that this was a pet that Boss had subdued again. However, just as Li Weiming thought of this, he suddenly saw another lion's head appear behind the lion. After the first one appeared, the second one appeared. More and more heads appeared. Everyone was stunned by the appearance of the lions. A group of lions appeared in front of everyone and stood behind Jing. Everyone stared at Jing Yu and swallowed their saliva. "Good fellow." Jing Yu looked at everyone's expressions and then calmly turned her head to look at the Lion King standing at the head of the group of lions. She reached out to touch the Lion King's head. The soldiers standing behind Jing Yu all held their swords in their hands and trembled. "Do you see this? This is my gift to all of you." Jing Yu had a faint smile in her eyes as she raised her hand to touch the Lion King's head. She looked up at the group of lions and said, "Since we can have Mahis cavalry, why can't we have a group of lion cavalry as well?" Chapter 1104. The Ninth Imperial Concubine. "What are you?" Shengwan Hongwen was also shocked by Jing Yu's words. He looked at Jing Yu fearfully. Jing Yu smiled faintly and said, "As you can see, what I want to do is to create a strong beast army." The moment Jing Yu finished speaking, the entire place fell silent. Jing Yu looked at everyone quietly and said, "Put down your weapons and come over to choose your mounts." When everyone heard Jing Yu's words, they all looked at each other, but no one moved. "Don't be afraid. They won't hurt you," Jing Yu said as she patted the Lion King's head. Everyone watched as the huge lion knelt down. Jing Yu jumped onto the Lion King's back and slowly stood up. There was no change in the expression of the woman sitting on the Lion King. Her originally pitch-black eyes turned into a resplendent golden color. She looked around at everyone and said indifferently, "Believe in these lions. They will be your companions on the battlefield." "Do you see the Mahis cavalry? What you need to do is to be like them." When Jing Yu finished speaking, the Mahis cavalry, who were originally standing at the side, heard Jing Yu's words and all of them subconsciously puffed out their chests and stood up straight. Receiving the baptism of everyone's gazes, they felt a sense of pride from the bottom of their hearts. "I believe in the Ninth Imperial Concubine." One of them took a deep breath and walked towards the lions in front of him. When he walked in front of one of the lions let out a low roar, scaring the soldier so much that he almost knelt down. When the Mahis cavalry saw the soldier's reaction, they almost laughed out loud. They inexplicably thought of themselves. It hadn't been that long, but how did it become a memory? Li Weiming looked at the ink qilin under him and patted its head. The ink qilin hummed twice and looked very intimate. The scene of them taming the ink qilin was still vivid in their minds. Now, they had become brothers who would go through life and death with the ink qilin. That afternoon was a historical change. Jingyue had created an army of beasts that were so powerful that it was terrifying. They had quietly risen in the Roman forest. 5 places, 5 armies. The wolf and tiger divisions were the main army, the Mahis cavalry and lion cavalry were the flanks, and the last assault team was made up of cheetahs. Jing Yu and the 5 captains of the Mahis cavalry started the beast army training in the plains. Everything was going according to Jing Yu's plan. Everything was going perfectly, but everything was ruined. The Nanli in Tokyo, who had been quiet all this time, finally couldn't hold back and started to attack. The training continued. This should have been a bad thing, but it turned into a good thing. The Tokyo and Nanli's troops became the whetstones for Jingyu to train the Beast Army. Half a month had passed since they entered the forest. In the living quarters, Jingyu looked at the map in front of her and frowned slightly. These days, there were more and more battles between the two sides, but she didn't know why. Just yesterday, the Tokyo and Nanli's troops suddenly withdrew from the Roman forest. This made Jingyu feel very uneasy. Chapter 1105. Boss, something has happened. Just as Jingyu was sitting by the table and contemplating the whole story, Li Weiming suddenly barged into Jingyu's tent. The moment he opened his mouth, Jingyu's uneasy heart skipped a beat. What's wrong? Jingyu looked at Li Weiming's grave expression, and her heart trembled slightly as she asked uneasily. Lord Jingyu went missing while he was on patrol, Li Weiming slowly said through gritted teeth. Instantly, all the blood drained from her face. Jingyu's eyes widened as she stared at Li Weiming in disbelief. What did you say? Xing Air just sent news that Lord Jinglang is nowhere to be found even after searching all the lines of defense. Li Weiming looked at Jingyu's expression and hurriedly said, Lord Xing Air and Miss Shangwan are already searching the perimeter. Perhaps there will be some news. Bring me there. Jingyu rushed out like a madwoman. Li Weiming looked at Jingyu and hurriedly followed behind her. However, the moment Jingyu stepped out of the door, she saw a group of people coming in from outside. Quick, quick, quick! Where's Miracle Dr. Chingo? A panicked voice called out. Jingyu's expression froze when she saw the person being carried in from outside the tent. Xing Air? The person lying on the stretcher was Xing Air. At this moment, Xing Air's black clothes were almost completely stained with blood. He looked at Jingyu weakly and opened his mouth to speak. In the end, he was carried into Qing Ji's tent. Linglan! Shangwan Linglan stood in a daze. Her body was covered in blood, and there were still traces of tears on her face. What's wrong? Is something wrong? Jingyu hurriedly walked over to Shangwan Linglan and asked. She looked at Shangwan Linglan's trembling hands, and her eyes were still filled with tears. Jingyu. Shangwan Linglan heard Jingyu's voice and finally seemed to regain her senses. She took a deep breath and said, Big Brother Jinglang has been captured. Nanli set up an ambush at the perimeter of the forest. We weren't able to bring Big Brother Jinglang back. How could this be? When Jingyu heard Shangwan Linglan's words, her hands trembled fiercely and her face was filled with panic. I don't know. Someone must have leaked the news. Shangwan Linglan closed her eyes tightly. Her face was filled with pain, as if she was trying to alleviate something. After half a minute, Shangwan Linglan finally sorted out her thoughts and continued to speak to Jingyu. Big Brother Jinglang led the soldiers on a routine patrol today. Xing Air and I were patrolling on the other side. Tokyo and Nanli's soldiers retreated in a strange manner. That's why Big Brother Jinglang ordered us not to leak any information about this patrol. In order to find out what was going on, we went outside the perimeter to find out what was going on. However, we didn't expect Big Brother Jinglang to hear fighting sounds the moment we left the perimeter. By the time Xing Air and I rushed over, it was already too late. Shangwan Linglan carefully recalled what happened. When Jingyu heard Shanghai Linglan's words, her heart trembled. She suddenly thought of something and grabbed Shanghai Linglan's hand. Big Brother was taken away by them? He's still alive, right? Yes, their intention seems to be to take Big Brother Jinglang away. Shangwan Linglan carefully recalled the scene and continued. With Big Brother Jinglang's martial arts, he shouldn't have been captured so easily. There must be some inside story. Chapter 1106. I know. Jingyu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Just as Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglong were talking outside, a cry of pain came from inside the room. It startled Shangguan Linglong so much that he quickly ran inside. Qing Gu wiped the sweat off his face as he walked towards Shangguan Linglong. How is it? Shangguan Linglong's eyes were filled with anxiety as he stared at Qing Gu in fear. Phew! Xing Er's injuries are very serious. Who could be so ruthless? Qing Gu took a deep breath and said, I've already pulled out the poison dart, but I can't cure the poison. What? Aren't you the godly doctor? Why can't you cure this poison? Shangguan Linglong heard Qing Ji's words and quickly grabbed Qing Ji's arm. Linglong, don't be so agitated. Let Qing Gu finish. Jing Yu held Shangguan Linglong's hand and said. Shangguan Linglong probably felt that he had lost his composure and lowered his head slightly. Qing Gu understood Shangguan Linglong's reaction very well and sighed. This is a poison specially made by the poison sect. Although I'm from the godly Dr. Valley, I can't cure this poison. Even if someone can cure it, they might not be able to completely remove it. Qing Gu looked steadily at Jing Yu and said, the only antidote is in the hands of the 3 leaders of the poison sect. This is the poison sect's most mysterious poison. My godly Dr. Valley has studied it for an entire lifetime and still hasn't been able to cure it. Qing Gu paused as he spoke and then said as if he was explaining, the antidote is in the hands of the Yun brothers. Naliwa probably doesn't have it. HM? Why do you say that? When Jing Yu heard Qing Gu deny that Nalan Moon didn't have the antidote, she frowned in surprise. Nalan Yu is the 3rd miss of the poison sect. She's famous for practicing the art of seduction. Her poisons are all incomparably despicable. Xing Er's poison, on the other hand, is a poison that seals his meridians. If he can't be treated, he'll become a cripple. All I can do is temporarily suppress the poison in his body. Even if there is no antidote, he will be an ordinary person for the rest of his life. He will have no inner strength, and his martial arts will be crippled. As soon as Qing Gu finished speaking, Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglong widened their eyes in shock. So the antidote is in the poison sect. Jing Yu slowly closed her eyes. Shangguan Linglong abruptly rose to his feet, his eyes filled with ruthlessness as he said, I'll go steal the antidote back. Stop! Shangguan Linglong had just taken a step when Jing Yu suddenly called out to him. Jing Yu, Shangguan Linglong looked anxiously at Jing Yu. Shangguan Linglong, have you forgotten your status? Jing Yu slowly rose to her feet. Her pitch-black eyes were fixed on Shangguan Linglong as she said, Is this something a general should do? I know you're worried about Xing Er's safety, but do you think I'm not worried about Big Brother's safety? Jing Yu calmly looked at Shangguan Linglong and said, What's the point of you going now? You'll just fall into the poison sex trap and lose another life. As soon as Jing Yu finished speaking, Shangguan Linglong's body stiffened. He stood in place, unable to speak. Qing Gu, are Xing Er's injuries serious? Jing Yu tilted her head to look at Qing Gu. Chapter 1107. Don't worry, I'll be able to treat this small injury. Qing Gu also stood up and looked at Jing Yu. I'll suppress the poison in Xing Er's body for now. I'll get the antidote in a month. I won't let anything happen to Xing Er. All right. Jing Yu heard Qing Ji's words and nodded slowly. I'll leave Xing Er to you. Jing Yu watched Qing Gu nod and turned to leave. Then she looked at Shangguan Linglong's expression and sighed softly. Go and bandage your wound. Think it through before coming to my room. After Jing Yu said this, she turned and went back to her room. She sat on the table and unfolded the map in front of her. As she looked at the lines in front of her, her hands clenched tightly by her sides. When Qin Bai walked into Jing Yu's room, he saw Jing Yu leaning against the table as she stared at the map in front of her. Her calm appearance caused Qin Bai's eyes to narrow slightly. Jing Yu, Qin Bai stood in front of Jing Yu and slowly called out. What's the matter? Jing Yu raised her head. Her eyes were a little dazed as she looked at Jing Yu. Nothing. Qin Bai lowered his head slightly and said, I heard that Jing Lang was taken away by the poison sect. I came to see if there's anything I can help with. Jing Yu's expression changed slightly when she heard Qin Bai's words. She slowly sat down by the table, and a cold light flashed in her eyes as she said, "The poison sect, they really can't wait to die." Jingyu. A call came from the door. Jingyu looked up and saw that Shangwan Linglan had already changed his clothes and was standing in front of Jingyu. "You're here?" Jingyu's expression didn't change when she saw Shangwan Linglan arrive. She looked up slightly and said, "Sit." After the three of them sat down, Jingyu said, "What do you think about the poison sect's sudden attack this time?" "I think it was premeditated." Shangwan Linglan took a deep breath and said, "Nan Li and Tokyo suddenly stopped fighting. We must have thought there was a plot and brought people to investigate. The poison sect used this reason to set up an ambush and capture Big Brother Jing Lang." Shangwan Linglan clenched her teeth and said, "They only took Big Brother Jing Lang away, not injuring him or taking his life. There is only one reason. Jingyu, they must have wanted to capture you." Shangwan Linglan stared intently at Jingyu and said, "It's the same for the poison dart and the antidote. It's the same for Big Brother Jing Lang. There's only one reason for that. They want you to go to the poison sect to save someone and find the antidote." Jingyu chuckled softly. She looked at Shangwan Linglan and said, "It looks like you're not stupid after all. You're clear-headed now?" Shangwan Linglan's face darkened when he heard Jingyu's words. He lowered his head and mumbled to himself. He really had been impulsive just now. Now that he was clear-headed, it wasn't hard to figure out the reason behind everything. "Since you already know, what do you plan to do now?" Shangwan Linglan asked Jingyu. "I'm going to save him and find the antidote," Jingyu said slowly. "But this is a trap. They want you to go and capture you," Shangwan Linglan quickly said when he heard Jingyu's words. Chapter 1108. "Do you mean I can't go?" Jingyu smiled helplessly at Shangwan Linglan and said, "This is also why they only captured Big Brother, and you guys were able to return. No matter what, I have to save Big Brother." Shangwan Linglan's throat choked slightly when he heard Jingyu's words. He couldn't say a word. "Linglan, I asked you to come because I need your help." Jingyu raised her head and looked steadily at Shangwan Linglan as she said, "I'll go on this rescue mission myself." "What?" Shangwan Linglan's eyes widened when he heard Jingyu's words. He looked at Jingyu in disbelief and opened his mouth to deny it. However, Jingyu raised her hand and stopped him. She smiled faintly and said, "Let me finish. You have to believe me. I will definitely save Big Brother and bring you the antidote." Jingyu took a deep breath and said, "I need you to do me a favor. When I'm not around, you have to protect everyone. You can't act rashly. Even if I can't come back, you can't let anyone save me. Not even you." Jingyu's eyes were filled with seriousness as she said slowly, "I?" Shangwan Linglan's expression changed when he heard Jingyu's words. He stared at Jingyu intently as his heart trembled slightly. "If I come back, bring someone to pick me up?" Jingyu smiled at Shangwan Linglan and said, "Don't worry, I won't let myself die so easily. After all, I still have a lot of things to do." "Jingyu." Shangwan Linglan looked at Jingyu's smile, and his heart ached. "I'll go with you." Just as the two of them were talking, Qin Bai suddenly spoke up. Shangwan Linglan and Jingyu heard Qin Bai's words and looked at Qin Bai with shock in their eyes. "Although I'm not familiar with the poison sect, I can't guarantee that the Holy Family isn't involved in this matter." Qin Bai looked sideways at Jingyu and said, "Jingyu, I'll go with you. If we run into anyone from the Holy Family, I can help you." "No." Jingyu rejected him without a second thought. She said with a serious expression, "It's a dangerous trip. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. I can't let you take the risk." "Jingyu, trust me." Qin Bai gripped Jingyu's hand tightly. His dark eyes were filled with sincerity as he said, "Let me go with you. I can help you." "Qin Bai." Jingyu's eyes were filled with helplessness. She looked at Qin Bai's sincere gaze and his incomparably familiar face and suddenly didn't know how to reject him. She frowned and pulled her hand away from Qin Bai's grasp, then turned her head away. Jing Yu's action was very natural, but it still fell into Shangguan Linglan's eyes. When he saw this, surprise flashed through Shangguan Linglan's eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He gave Qin Bai a strange look, but didn't say a word. In the end, Jing Yu still couldn't convince Qin Bai. Looking at Qin Bai's expression, if she didn't let him go, Jing Yu had an inexplicable feeling that Qin Bai would follow her in secret. Since that was the case, Jing Yu had no choice but to let Qin Bai go with her. Jing Yu wanted to go to the enemy camp alone. Everyone was talking about it, but Jing Yu was resolute. No one could persuade her. Qin Gu was also quite shocked by Jing Yu's actions. He even summoned people from 5 other places, hoping that someone could convince Jing Yu. Chapter 1109. However, it was clear that it was useless. There could not be a single mistake in this rescue mission. Jing Yu would not allow herself to make any mistakes. In these 3 days, Jing Yu had already explained everything that needed to be done. All that was left was to see the results. Assassination. Rescue. Jing Yu lowered her head and looked at the shiny dagger in her hand. Her eyes were filled with a cold light. She was no stranger to this. Jing Yu? A voice called out to her from behind. Jing Yu turned around to look. Fang Ziqing, why are you here? Jing Yu blinked her eyes and asked in surprise when she saw Fang Ziqing, who was dressed in white, walking over slowly. I heard that you were going to the Tokyo S camp? Ever since Fang Ziqing came to Jinling town with Xiao Yuling, he had never left. He had always been by Jinglang's side. Because his martial arts were not very good, he just stayed here. Yes, Jing Yu replied faintly. She did not say anything else. I heard that Qin Bai will be going with you? Fang Ziqing asked again. Yes. Jing Yu frowned and asked Fang Ziqing. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Nothing. Fang Ziqing smiled faintly. His gaze fell on the dagger in Jing Yu's hand. Then, his gaze fell on the black mark on Jing Yu's middle finger. He paused for a moment as if he wanted to see what it was. Jing Yu. However, just as Fang Ziqing had this thought, he heard someone calling out to him from behind. Jing Yu lowered her hand and turned around to see who it was. Qin Bai, you're here. Jing Yu smiled faintly when she saw Qin Bai walk over. What's wrong? What are you talking about? Am I disturbing you? Qin Bai was slightly surprised when he saw Fang Ziqing. Then he smiled politely and asked Fang Ziqing and Jing Yu. I'm fine. Fang Ziqing smiled faintly and looked at Qin Bai with a pair of smiling eyes. The smile on his face was very gentle. He looked at Qin Bai and said, Speaking of which, I haven't spoken much with young Master Qin. Huh? Qin Bai laughed and said with arched eyebrows, Jing Yu has told me about you a long time ago, the son of Grand Secretary Fang Ziqing. Really? Fang Ziqing smiled helplessly and said, I believe that's not how she introduced me. Huh? Qin Bai laughed happily when he heard this. Jing Yu stood aside and looked at Fang Ziqing with disdain. Old fox, I heard that young Master Qin is from the Holy Family? The smile on Fang Ziqing's face didn't change, and the words he asked were also very casual, like a chat between friends. It was so casual that no one would feel bored. Yes. Qin Bai's expression didn't change when he heard Fang Ziqing's question. He smiled faintly and said, Why? Young Master Fang, do you know a lot about the Holy Family? No. Fang Ziqing shook his head and said with a smile, I'm just curious. Hey, Fang Ziqing, why are you so talkative? Jing Yu couldn't stand it anymore. She glared at Fang Ziqing and said, If you have something to say, say it. If not, get out of here. Little yeah, I just got here. You're driving me away. Aren't you too heartless? Fang Ziqing looked at Jing Yu with hidden bitterness. You shut up. What are you shouting for? I'm getting goosebumps. Jing Yu made a disgusted face and stared at Fang Ziqing. You can play here by yourself. Qin Bai, let's go. Chapter 11:10. Hey, hey, hey. Fong Zicheng hurriedly grabbed Jingyu and said helplessly, "This is the pouch that Shangguan Linglan asked me to give you. He said that he asked for a protective amulet and asked you to wear it." Protective amulet? Jingyu raised her hand and took the pouch Fong Zicheng handed over. She said in a conflicted tone, "Since when did Linglan trust this person? Has she been assimilated by Second Xing? He asked for it out of goodwill for you. Is this how you treat him?" Fong Zicheng complained bitterly when he heard Jingyu's words. Jingyu rolled her eyes at Fong Zicheng and said, "You're the heartless one." I? Fong Zicheng was infuriated by Jingyu's words. However, he couldn't say a word as he watched Jingyu turn and leave. Qinbai watched this scene quietly from the side. When he saw that Jingyu had left, he bowed apologetically to Fong Zicheng and quickly caught up with Jingyu. What Qinbai didn't notice was that the moment he turned around, Fong Zicheng's originally warm expression froze. The iciness in his expression was clearly visible. Fong Zicheng's dark eyes stared at Qinbai's back, and he frowned slightly. Jingyu and Qinbai reorganized themselves and made arrangements for everything at hand. They finally decided to set off for the Tokyo camp early the next morning to rescue Jinglang and find the antidote for Xing'er. The morning fog was very thick. Jingyu stood at the entrance of the valley. She was dressed in the same black clothes, and her long black hair was tied into a neat ponytail. Qinbai was standing beside her, and he was also dressed in black. The two of them stood in front of the valley with calm eyes. "Let's go." The sky was still gray. It was still dark. Before anyone woke up, Jingyu and Qinbai had already left. "Aren't you going to say goodbye to them?" Qinbai turned slightly to look at Jingyu and asked. "There's no need." Jingyu shook her head slowly. She turned and led Qinbai out of the valley. She breathed in the air outside the forest, and her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, "Saying goodbye will only add to the sadness." When Qinbai heard Jingyu's reply, he raised his eyebrows slightly and didn't say anything. Standing outside the forest, Jingyu blew her whistle as usual and rode Yin Jian and Yin Feng out of the forest. The cold wind blew past their ears. Qinbai rode on Yin Jian and silently looked at Jingyu's back. The forest was silent. Two gray wolves rode on Jingyu and Qinbai. They were like a gust of wind. Their strong figures were also dressed in black, and their faces were also calm as they dashed out of the forest. After entering the Roman forest for so long, they finally came out of the forest again. Under the golden sunlight, Jingyu and Qinbai slowly stopped on the road outside the forest. Jingyu flipped off the ground and patted Yinfeng's head. She turned and looked at Qinbai. "We'll have to walk the rest of the way by ourselves." Jingyu raised her head and looked at Qinbai. She watched the two wolves, Yin Arrow and Yin Wind, run into the forest. Then she looked ahead. Jingyu and Qinbai's actions didn't cause much of a commotion. At this moment, another scene was happening in the Tokyo S camp. Chapter 11:11. On this plain, the Tokyo and Cebu's troops were stationed. When night fell, the tents lit up and the sound of running water could be heard. Behind the screen, a delicate figure was slowly moving. "Shadow." A gentle and charming voice sounded as a black figure appeared behind the screen. "Master." The man was dressed in black, and his expression didn't change at all. He bowed as he stood behind the screen. He could feel the water vapor coming from behind the screen. There was a faint fragrance coming from the water vapor. "How is the matter I asked you to do?" The familiar voice sounded, and the sound of water dripping could be heard. A graceful figure slowly stood up from behind the screen. Her slender fingers took the screen and draped it over her body. "It's all done." Such a beautiful woman coming out of the bath. The shadow stood there expressionlessly and didn't look at her. "Very good." The barefoot figure walked out. Her body was full of temptation. Step by step, she approached the shadow. She narrowed her eyes and said, "You did very well this time. Tell me, how should I reward you?" When Nayland Yu's words fell, the shadow's body stiffened for a moment. He then expressionlessly lowered his head and said, "Being able to do things for Master is something this subordinate should do." Heh. Nayland Yu chuckled. Her eyes were filled with charm. Her delicate body moved closer to the shadow. The fragrance coming from her body made the shadow's eyes droop. Nayland Yu raised her hand and hooked it around the shadow's neck. "How about you let me serve you well this time?" When Nayland Yu's words fell, the shadow's body stiffened for a moment. "This subordinate doesn't dare." The shadow took a step back and knelt on the ground. He lowered his head and replied, "You?" Nayland Yu's hand was empty. She looked at the shadow that was kneeling on the ground, and her face was filled with anger. She lifted her foot and fiercely kicked the shadow's body. The shadow didn't dodge and just fell to the ground. It lowered its eyes and didn't say a word. "Who do you think you are?" Nayland Yu's face was full of anger. She suddenly turned around and said, "Get out." "Yes." The shadow lowered his head in response. Then he stood up with an expressionless face and walked outside. The shadow stood outside the tent and watched as a man walked into Nayland Yu's tent. This was the guard that was guarding Nayland Yu's tent. The shadow naturally recognized him. When the shadow saw that the man was about to enter the tent, he slowly stepped forward and blocked the man's path. "Let him in." The shadow hadn't even opened its mouth to speak when Nayland Yu's voice came from behind it. The shadow's body stiffened when it heard this. It stood there silently for a moment before slowly moving aside. The guard threw a playful glance at Shadow before swaggering into the tent. Not long after, sounds that would make one blush resounded from the tent. The mixed voices of men and women were so ear-piercing in the middle of the night. The shadow stood in front of the tent and could clearly hear the sounds coming from inside. His pitch-black eyes moved slightly, but he didn't move. The expression on his face was still the same. The silence was terrifying. After an unknown amount of time, the sounds coming from inside the tent slowly stopped. The shadow stood in front of the tent motionlessly. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.